The woman at the counter did not look up when Hazel Drummond approached. That was the first thing Nate Fielding noticed. He was standing 6 people back in the business class queue at Vancouver International. His daughter Poppy asleep against his shoulder, her small fingers curled around the strap of his carry-on. He noticed because he had been watching the line move slowly, the way you watch things move when you are tired and have nowhere else to put your attention. And when the old woman reached the front, the agent simply continued typing. Hazel Drummond was 74 years old. She wore a beige wool coat that had seen better decades, a pair of flat leather shoes with a small scuff on the left toe, and she carried a single canvas bag with a broken zipper she had pinned shut with a safety pin. Her white hair was set neatly. Her posture was the kind that comes not from pride, but from a long life of carrying things without complaint. She placed her boarding pass on the counter. The agent, a man in his early 30s named Bryce Walcott, whose name tag sat slightly crooked on his lapel, finally looked up. Then he looked at the woman again, in the way a person looks when what they are seeing does not match what they expected. "Business class," he said. It was not a statement either. It landed somewhere in between, the way a doubt does. "Yes," Hazel said. He picked up the boarding pass. He turned it over. He held it under the counter light the way a cashier holds a suspicious bill. "This is a full fare ticket," he said. "I know what I purchased," she said. He set it down. He looked at his screen. He typed something slowly, deliberately, in the way people type when they want you to understand that they are checking something very important. Then he said, "I'm going to need to verify this booking." "Duh, you can verify it," Hazel said. "The name is Drummond." "Hazel Drummond. I booked it 4 weeks ago through your airline's website. Do you have the confirmation email?" "I don't carry my phone everywhere I go." "A printout?" "No." He picked up the boarding pass again. He examined it the same way he had examined it 30 seconds ago, as though something might have changed in the interval. The people in the line behind Hazel began the small, restless movements of those who are waiting and aware of it. One man exhaled audibly. Someone shifted a suitcase. Nate Fielding watched all of this from 6 people back. Poppy stirred against his shoulder. She was 9 years old and had been awake since 4 in the morning and had finally surrendered to sleep somewhere in the security line. He adjusted his arms slightly so she would not fall, and he kept watching. He had been a plumber in Burnaby for 11 years. Before that he had worked on a framing crew in Kelowna. He was 41 years old, and he had been raising Poppy alone for 3 of those years, since her mother left for Edmonton with someone she had met at a work conference. And Nate had not contested it, because Poppy had chosen to stay with him, and that was the only thing that had mattered at the time. He was flying to Halifax for his uncle's retirement dinner. The business class tickets had been a gift from his uncle, who had done well in commercial real estate and wanted to treat them. Nate had almost declined out of habit. He watched Bryce Walcott ask Hazel Drummond if perhaps someone else had purchased the ticket on her behalf. He watched Hazel's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. He watched her say no. She had purchased it herself, with her own card, using her own name, and he watched Walcott say that he would need to contact his supervisor before he could process the boarding pass, and he watched the line grow still with the particular stillness of people who have decided this is not their problem. Nate looked down at Poppy's sleeping face. He thought about what she would see if she were awake. He thought about what she would think. He thought about what he would say to her afterward, when she asked why no one said anything. He had no good answer for that. He had been trying for 3 years to have good answers. He moved out of the line. "Excuse me," he said. He said it quietly, not to make a scene. He stepped up beside Hazel, who glanced at him sideways, and he looked at Walcott. "Is there a problem with her ticket?" Walcott looked at him, then at Poppy still asleep on his shoulder, then back at him. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to step back in line. I'm assisting another passenger." "I can see that," Nate said. "I'm asking if there's a problem with her ticket. It's a verification issue." "What kind of verification?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss another passenger's booking with a third party." Nate looked at Hazel. "Is it all right if I ask?" Hazel looked at him for a moment. She was the kind of woman who did not accept help easily. He could see that, not because she was proud but because she had spent enough years asking for things that were simply hers and not receiving them. But she gave a small nod. "He's been holding my boarding pass for 4 minutes," she said. "And he has yet to scan it." Nate looked back at Walcott. "Why haven't you scanned it?" "I explained that to the passenger." "Explain it to me." Walcott set the boarding pass down on the counter between them, and looked at Nate with the carefully managed patience of someone who has been trained to appear calm while feeling the opposite. "Sir, this is not your booking. This is not your concern. I would ask you, again, to return to your place in line." Nate didn't move. Poppy shifted in her sleep and made a small sound, the kind she made when she was on the edge of waking. He reached up and patted her back once gently, without looking away from Walcott. "She has a boarding pass," Nate said. "It has her name on it. It says business class. You are in the business class line. What exactly requires verification?" "The system flagged it." "Flagged it for what reason?" Walcott said nothing. "For what reason?" Nate asked again, and his voice was still even, still quiet, but there was something underneath it now. More like the refusal to pretend. A woman behind Nate in the line said quietly, to her husband, "Good for him." Walcott leaned slightly forward, and lowered his voice. "Sir, I want to be direct with you. Full-fare business class tickets are generally purchased by corporate accounts, or frequent flyers. When we see this type of ticket under unusual circumstances." "Unusual circumstances," Nate said. "Yes. What's unusual?" Walcott did not answer. Nate let the silence sit for a moment. Then he said, "Are you asking me to say out loud what you're implying? Because I think you'd rather I didn't." Walcott's expression shifted. Just slightly. The managed calm developed a small crack. Hazel Drummond had been watching this exchange with the stillness of someone who had long ago made peace with being underestimated, but who had never made peace with being humiliated. She straightened slightly and said, in a voice that was clear and unhurried, "I would like to speak to your supervisor." "I've already called for." "Not eventually," Hazel said. "Now." There was a pause. Then a woman appeared from behind the counter, walking with the brisk efficiency of someone who had heard tone even from a distance, and understood it to mean something. She was perhaps 50, with silver hair clipped short and a name tag that read Supervisor. Kathleen Marsh. She looked at Walcott. She looked at Hazel. She looked at Nate with Poppy asleep on his shoulder. "What's happening here?" she asked. Walcott began to explain the verification procedure. Kathleen Marsh listened for approximately 8 seconds, then held up one hand. "Scan the boarding pass," she said. "The system." "Scan it." Walcott picked up the boarding pass. He scanned it. The screen returned its result in less than 2 seconds. Kathleen Marsh looked at the screen. Then she looked at Hazel. Something passed across her face. Something that was not quite recognition, not quite surprise, but the particular look of a person assembling information very quickly, and arriving at a conclusion they had not expected. "Mrs. Drummond," she said. "I apologize for the delay. I'll personally escort you to the lounge." Walcott had gone still. "That won't be necessary," Hazel said quietly. "I know the way." She picked up her boarding pass from the counter and turned to Nate. She looked at him for a moment in the way people look at someone they are trying to commit to memory. Then she said, "Thank you." "I didn't do much," he said. "You did enough," she said. She walked toward the gate. Nate watched her go, then returned to his place in the line. The man behind him stepped aside to let him back in without being asked. No one said anything. Poppy woke up as he settled back into position and looked around with the confused, soft-eyed expression of a child emerging from deep sleep. "Are we boarding?" she asked. "Soon," he said. She leaned her head back against his shoulder and closed her eyes again. They boarded 20 minutes later. Nate found their seats, helped Poppy with her seatbelt, stowed the carry-on, and settled in. Business class was quieter than he expected. The seats were wider. There was a pillow in a proper case. Poppy pressed her nose against the window and watched the baggage carts move across the tarmac. Hazel Drummond was seated 2 rows ahead. She had her canvas bag on her lap, and was looking out her own window. Nate did not try to speak to her again. He did not feel that it was his place. He had done one small thing, and he was glad he had done it, and that was all. Poppy fell asleep again before takeoff, and Nate sat with his coffee and watched the lights of Vancouver pull away beneath the clouds and thought about his uncle and the dinner and the long weekend ahead. He did not think about Hazel Drummond again until the flight was 40 minutes from Halifax, when a member of the cabin crew came down the aisle, crouched beside his seat, and handed him a folded piece of paper. "From the passenger in 3A, she said, and then she was gone. He unfolded it. The handwriting was small and precise, the kind that comes from a generation that learned penmanship as a subject. "Mr. Fielding," it read. "I don't make a habit of introducing myself to strangers, but you were kind when kindness was not convenient. And I have learned that this is rarer than it should be. My name is Hazel Drummond. If that name means nothing to you, it won't mean anything for long. I am on my way to Halifax to finalize I have been building for 31 years. It is not the first acquisition and likely not the last. I noticed your daughter sleeping. I noticed the way you held her. I know what it costs to do something uncomfortable in a public place when a child is watching, even a sleeping one. I would like to offer you something, not as payment, because what you did cannot be priced, but as a connection. I have an opening on my property management team in Halifax for someone with trades experience who wants something steadier. The salary is fair, the hours are sane. If you're interested, my assistant's number is below. If you're not, please enjoy your coffee. It was nice to sit near someone decent. H. Drummond. Nate read it twice. He looked up at the back of the seat in 3A. Poppy had woken up and was looking at the piece of paper in his hand. "What's that?" she asked. "A note," he said. "From who?" He thought about how to explain it. He thought about the moment in the line, the small decision, the way it had felt like almost nothing at the time, and somehow also like exactly the right thing. The way those two things are sometimes the same. "From the woman we helped at the airport," he said. Poppy considered this. "The one with the pin on her bag?" "Yeah. What does it say?" He folded the note once and held it between his hands for a moment. "It says sometimes the right thing turns out to matter more than you thought it would," he said. Poppy looked at him with the measuring expression she used when she suspected he was simplifying something for her benefit. "Is that what it actually says?" "Close enough," he said. She turned back to the window. Below them, the Atlantic coast was coming into view, gray and enormous and cold in the January light, and Nova Scotia was a dark line on the edge of it. And somewhere in the city ahead, a hotel group was changing hands, and a man from Burnaby was looking at a phone number, written in careful, precise handwriting, and trying to decide what kind of life he was allowed to want. He decided. He put the note in his front pocket and left it there for the rest of the flight, close, where he could feel it.